Surprise! Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Isaiah Warlock here. This video is going to be a false chord tutorial. And false chord is a method of screaming and growling and doing all kinds of, metal vocals, distorted vocals, and that sort of thing. It's one of the most common ways of doing these kinds of vocals. Probably the most common, actually. And it's definitely the simplest way. So I'm going to be showing you how to do false chord screams and growls, a few easy steps to get you to the place where you can do them, some ways which you can practice them, how to do them safely and consistently, and also some places where I made mistakes in trying to learn false chord and how you cannot make those mistakes. A quick demonstration of what some false chord sounds like is this. Okay, those are some growls and screams using false chord. So I'm going to teach you how to do that right now. Right before we jump into it, guys, please consider subscribing. It's free. You can unsubscribe whenever you want, so you might as well, and it helps me out a whole lot. Also, a huge percentage of the people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed. So if you do enjoy my videos, just don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Okay, so if you've been watching me for a little while, you may have seen my video about how to do a fry scream. And in that video, I do compare false chord and fry and what the difference is and what they sound like and feel like. But that video is mostly dedicated to how to do a fry scream. And if you've been doing some research into screaming and the different methods of screaming, you'll definitely have heard of fry and false chord. Those are the two main kinds of screams that you'll hear about from YouTubers, from vocal coaches. There are more than those two, but those are definitely the two most common ones. So in this video, I will be explaining how to do false chord, probably the most common technique for screaming and growling. But after you watch this video, definitely go check out my fry screaming video. I'll put a link in the description, just so you have a overall better grasp of the difference between the two, which one you want to try to go with first. So I actually learned fry screaming first. And false chord took me way longer, but that's only because I didn't really understand what it was. And if I had just had somebody to explain to me really simply what was going on with false chord and what the difference was between false chord and fry, I would have gotten it a lot faster, because actually false chord is really, really simple. It's way easier to master than fry. So for most people, learning false chord is probably going to be the thing you want to do first before fry, just because fry is a little bit more complicated to try to figure out how to do, and it takes a bit longer. But you could also be like me and want to do fry first. Either way is fine. So what is false chord? Well, false chord is creating distortion with your voice. That's what all screaming techniques are trying to get you to do, is to make some distortion with your voice. Now, I'm not talking about distortion like an effect in a program, because there's that as well. But it's distortion it's just kind of like white noise that you're making, and you're not really putting your own voice in it. Now, you can put your own voice in it, and by that I mean put pitch in it, put notes in it. You can do that, and there's other methods of doing that. With false chord, you never really do that. You can do that with fry, you can do that with soft tissue distortion, and you can do it with other kinds of screams. But false chord is the technique that's going to sound the most kind of big and resonant and kind of scary, like a monster sort of. Also, I just want to tell you guys real quick that I do teach online screaming lessons. Fry screaming, false chord, all kinds of screaming. But if you want some one-on-one online screaming lessons, vocal lessons from me, just let me know in the comments or DM me at my Instagram. Here is my Instagram. You can also get my email from my about section on my channel and email me there. And let me know if you want to have some online one-on-one screaming lessons with me. False chord is probably the best thing for doing these really loud, really deep growls. Like, okay, you can't really get that depth and that resonance with fry. You can do growls with fry, but false chord is definitely the way you want to go if you want to do these big monstery growls. And you can also do mids and highs with false chord, like ah! And yeah! Okay, that's what that sounds like, to do mids and highs with false chord. But when I first tried to learn false chord, I heard people talking about using the bridge in your voice, the place where your voice cracks between your chest voice and your head voice, like finding that place. And there's a few vocal coaches that teach that, and I'm not saying that they're wrong, But I heard a lot of stuff about that, and that really it really confused me because I couldn't really do that, and so I thought that I wasn't doing false chord correctly, and I would do things like, yeah, but I thought that was just a natural growl, and I thought that wasn't false chord, but it turns out that actually is false chord, and false chord's really easy to do. So don't try to overcomplicate it. False chord is gonna feel kind of natural. And for me, and for a lot of people, that's going to feel like, oh, that's the wrong way to do it, since it feels like that's just a natural way to do it. Because for a lot of screaming stuff, you hear, oh, you want to do it the safe way. You don't want to scream naturally. And that's true for the most part. But you have to understand that false chord is, out of all the different ways of screaming, kind of the most natural way to scream. Because people will use false chord in day-to-day life without even knowing it. Some funny examples of this, and I don't know if you guys will know what I'm talking about, but Filthy Frank, I grew up watching Filthy Frank on YouTube, you know, one of the most legendary YouTubers, also known as Pink Guy. Now he's known as Joji, the artist Joji. He used to be called Filthy Frank. He was a YouTuber. And he would do this, he would do his silly voice, which would sound like, hey kids, all right, today we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this, and he would use false chord probably without even thinking about it. He was just trying to make his voice sound raspy, but that is false chord. Also, PewDiePie does this from time to time. I'm sure a lot of you guys watch PewDiePie, and he'll do a silly voice like, all right, well, now we have to blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that sound is false chord, and you'll hear people use this in day-to-day life probably without even thinking about it. And that's why I'm saying, of all the different ways of screaming, it's kind of the most natural because we can do it pretty easily. Now, there's a few ways to get the false chord sound in your voice first. And the way I like to explain how to get started with false chord is there's a few sounds that you can make, that we make all the time, that are going to get you starting to move in that false chord direction. And one of them is a cough. So like, for example, if you cough, you'll notice at the beginning of the cough, if you slow it down, there's a bit of like a rumbly sound, right? A bit of raspy sound. That's false chord right there. Okay? Now, here's the thing, is yours won't be there as readily available as mine is because I've been practicing false chord for a long time. Even when I cough, I have more false chord in my voice than probably you would if you've never done false chord. And that really messed me up because I would see people do this kind of thing. Also, another one is clearing your throat. When you clear your throat like that, that is the same thing. When you clear your throat, you're doing some false chord, and if you can just kind of harness that sound, okay, and it's that kind of thing. But as I was saying, I would hear people do this kind of thing, vocal coaches do that, and I would do the same thing. I'd be like, okay, and I wouldn't have the sound in my voice. And so I'm sure a lot of you guys are experiencing the same thing, is you're thinking, oh, I guess I just can't do it, or I guess I'm doing it wrong because, oh, he does it and it's right there ready to go. And yeah, for me, it's right there ready to go just because I've been practicing it for so long. But for you, if you do the clearing your throat or the coughing, it'll be there, but it'll probably be a lot quieter. So you have to build it up. You have to build it up from a smaller place. But it's quite easy to learn. If you just know what you're looking for, you can develop a big false chord growl in literally, maybe 2 or 3 days. So those are 2 exercises to get the sound in. The cough, draw the cough out, make it a long cough, and that sound that you feel and hear at the beginning, that's false chord. So drag that out. See if you can get that to last a bit longer. Okay, start practicing it. Try to harness that sound. Again, there's that one, and there's the clearing your throat one. Now this one's quite good because it starts with your mouth closed, right? And when your mouth is closed, you don't have as much air passing through your larynx and through your voice box, so it's easier to kind of control what sound you're making. So if you do it with your mouth closed, you can start to feel it. And it's really important that you know what this feels like, because if it feels like it's painful at all, then you're probably doing it wrong. Now, I'm not saying that you won't lose your voice. If you do this for a little while, you will 100% lose your voice after doing this for a little while, the first time you do it. And that's completely normal. Thing is the more times you lose your voice and the more times you get it back, and you will get it back, trust me, then the stronger your voice will get and the more consistent you'll get at doing false chord and at screaming and even singing in general. Even singers lose their voice for singing really loudly for a long time. That's just how your voice works. So don't be afraid if you do lose your voice doing this. It will happen. So there's the coughing, there's the clearing your throat. Another way is to do kind of like a cow sound, like if you say moo, and it's the same idea because you start with your mouth closed for the right? And that allows you to control the sound a bit better. So you start and make a sound and just like you're angry. Okay? So you want to and once you get that sound in there, slowly open your mouth to an O sound to say like moo, okay? All right, and you go building it up from there. You go harnessing it from there. So there's 3 exercises that you can do to start getting the sound in your voice. Okay, the coughing, the clearing your throat, the and then of course the moo. Once you can do all 3 of those, something else that's very important to keep in mind is you do not want to get your vocal cords involved with this, okay? What's actually going on in your voice when you do this is you have your vocal cords, or vocal folds technically, which are in your voice box right here. If you're a guy, they're in your Adam's apple right here, right? If you're not, then they're, somewhere in there. But you've got them in there, right? And right above them, you have these other kind of flaps of cartilage, basically. Those are your false cords. So they're called false cords because they're kind of like your real vocal cords, but they're false. What that means is they're not the chords in your voice that actually help you speak. Like right now, when I make a note, la 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 la. When I do that, I'm engaging my real vocal folds or vocal cords, and they're vibrating, okay, and they're making a pitch, they're making a noise. But when you do false chord growls, you do not want to bring in your real vocal cords because that'll make you lose. That will make you lose your voice a lot faster, and it can lead to injury over a long period of time. So what you want to do, you just want to engage your false chords, not your real vocal cords. And the way to make sure that you're doing that is to put your throat in the position that you put it when you're about to yawn. Okay, so if you yawn. And even if you just pretend to yawn, you'll feel your throat open up. Okay? And what that is your vocal cords, which are like this, opening and staying open like that. Okay? And I've talked about on the channel before shutting off your vocal cords like this. Okay? So that's how you shut them off. But you do not want to do that here. You don't want to do anything like that. You want to make sure that they're nice and open, and that's how you do it. Pretend to yawn, and your vocal cords will open, okay? So whenever you're going to do the false chord growl or scream, you want to make sure that your vocal cords are open, and you do that by doing the whole yawning position. That opens them up, right? And that'll just make sure that when you're doing the growls and screams, you're only implementing your false chords, because this is a false chord scream, not a real vocal chord scream. So that is how you do the false chord growling and screaming. Now remember, 3 ways to get the sound in your voice are the coughing, the clearing out your throat, and the moo, okay? And you always want to remember to have your throat open, like you're yawning, so that you do not engage your real vocal cords. You only engage your false cords. Now, I'm going to talk to you about some places that I personally went wrong in trying to learn false chord, and hopefully you can not go wrong in these same ways. Now, one of them I already talked about it a little bit, but it was that I thought that false chord is the same thing as bridge distortion. Now, for some people, it is. Or for some people, they think it is, and maybe it is. But for me, in my voice, I find that bridge distortion and false chord distortion, I find them in really different ways. And if you don't know what bridge distortion is, it's just another way of screaming. There's fry, false chord, and there's also bridge distortion, and there's also soft tissue distortion, okay? And people talk about bridge distortion sometimes, and they tell you how to do that, and they say that that's false chord. I'm not hating on any vocal coaches that will say anything like this, because the thing is, everybody's voice is different. So you're going to find false chord and in a way that's probably pretty different than the way I find it. All I can do is tell you my journey and figuring it out. But for me, a mistake that I made was trying to find false chord in bridge distortion. And as I said, your bridge is where your chest voice meets your head voice. Okay, so if you move your voice up and down like this, I actually don't really have a bridge that much because I took a bunch of singing lessons to get rid of my bridge so that I can sing, you know, higher notes and that kind of thing. But basically, it'll be around there where your voice kind of cracks when you make your voice go really high. You know, it'll sound kind of like that. And if you go in there and you push, you will get bridge distortion. And that's a whole different kind of scream, okay? And I thought that was false chord, but it's not. Or, well, for some people it is connected. For me, it's a really different technique of getting that. So that's one of the mistakes I made, was thinking that that was false chord and trying to do that. And whenever I did false chord, because I could do it I've been able to do it for a long time. You know, I've been able to do, you know, just kind of by instinct, honestly. But I always thought that that was a natural growl, and so I didn't want to actually do that because I thought it was going to hurt my voice. But it won't hurt your voice. It'll make you lose your voice, but your voice will get stronger. But that is really false chord. And so that's basically it. Just, you have to be mindful of the fact that there's lots of different ways of screaming, and everybody's voice is different. So somebody who tells you that you have to find false chord in one way, they may actually be talking about a different kind of scream, like bridge distortion, or like soft tissue distortion, or even like fry. You just have to be mindful that there's all these different kinds and that everybody's voice is completely different. Okay, so I hope that was helpful to you. I hope you can now do, or in a few days at least, you'll be able to do a false chord, some false chord growls, some false chord screams. Remember, be careful with your voice. Drink water a lot. Drink a lot of water. That'll help with false chord. And remember, you will lose your voice, okay? You will lose it. That's a given. If you do false chord for a little while, you're going to lose your voice, especially if it's your first time, but you'll get it back, and you'll be able to do false chord for longer, and you'll lose it again, and then, you know, you get the idea. Your voice gets stronger as you do all these different things. Your voice will get stronger and stronger, and you'll build consistency with these kinds of vocals. I should also talk about some artists that use false chord. Probably the band that helped me the most to find my personal kind of way of doing false chord is Motionless in White. And Chris Motionless does amazing false chord growls and screams. And they're definitely the band that kind of inspired me the most to do false chord. Because for a long time, I just used fry. Because I thought it sounded better. But when I heard a lot of the things that Chris Motionless from Motionless in White was doing with false chord, I thought, oh, I gotta learn this. I gotta learn to you know, do better false chord, because it just sounds so cool and it's really useful. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you find this video useful. As I said, do not forget to subscribe. It helps me out a whole lot, and I hope to see you in the next video. I'm Isaiah Warlock, and goodbye.
Surprise!